Stuck in quarantine with my one-night stand. Mandatory citywide quarantine effective immediately. All residents are ordered to shelter in place until further notice. I repeat, this is not a drill. The words from the news anchor on the TV struck me like a freight train. I gaped, trying to make sense of it all. Quarantine? Shelter in place? Not a drill. Holy hell! Is this a joke? The gravely sound of a deep voice broke into my sprinting thoughts. I turned to face the source, the French exchange student from last night. He was standing in the doorway of my bedroom, pushing one leg into his neatly pressed slacks, backpack in the other hand. My mind raced, trying to conjure up memories of how this chiseled Adonis ended up in my apartment. I recalled heading to my usual bar down the street, determined to drown my sorrows after another soul-crushing week of finals at NYU. There had been an open mic night, a stage full of hipsters reciting pretentious poetry, and then him. He stood out like a Michelangelo statue in a sea of Picassos, all sharp angles and brooding stares. When he started reciting his original work, something about the cruel impermanence of love and his breakup with his longtime boyfriend. I'd been a goner. Pretentious and hot, I'd slurred to my best friend Freya, slumping against the bar. My kryptonite. You've been saying that all semester, she snorted into her vodka cranberry. You had your chance. Now the exchange program is over. Above all, I'm pretty sure his ex-boyfriend is waiting for him in the south of France. Liam Gerard, the hottie from my elective class. I'd had all semester to walk up to him, but I always balked at the last moment. Freya was right. I had my chance and I blew it. But, after a few more shots, her warning had been swept away in a tide of tequila and courage. The rest of the night came back to me in sloshy, disjointed flashes. Flirting at the bar, arguing the merits of Keats versus Baudelaire, a giggly Uber ride back to my place, sloppy drunken kisses that tasted like top-shelf gin, and bad decisions. Hey! I returned to the reality of two fingers snapping in my face. Hey, what's your name? I shook my head slowly, realizing we didn't even get to the name part before the let's see each other naked part. Noah. My name is Noah, and about your earlier question, I don't think it's a joke, man. We stared at each other, the horrible reality sinking in like lead weights. We were stuck in lockdown in my crappy 500-square-foot apartment with a stranger. No end in sight. Panic clawed its way up my throat. I could barely keep my plant alive, let alone handle a pandemic. And I wasn't expected to do it alongside a pretentious poetry snob who probably jetted off to Paris every summer. No, I have a flight back home this afternoon. Liam shot to his feet, running a hand through his artfully rumpled hair. No, I cannot be trapped here with you. He said it like I was something he stepped in. As much as I remember, he was pretty enthusiastic last night. Anger flared in my chest. Well, excusez-moi, your highness, I snapped. It's not exactly the Hilton, but it's what I've got. Liam paced my tiny living room, all coiled energy and French cursing. I just stood there frozen. What do we do? Food? Supplies? How much did I have? Mentally, I started taking inventory of my measly pantry. Yesterday was restock day. Enough to last my antisocial ass through the break. My eyes fell on Liam again, and a hysterical laugh bubbled in my throat. I was trapped in a bad sitcom. The Odd Couple, Quarantine Edition. I cannot believe this, Liam was muttering. I have a life, you know, Louis. Louis? Is that your ex? I sputtered, twiddling my thumbs. The one you wrote the poem about? Slightly embarrassed, he nodded, sinking onto the couch next to me. He wants us to talk things out. I'm sorry about yesterday, the alcohol. Ouch, okay. That stung. I wasn't exactly planning to marry him after a one-night stand, but hearing him talk so fondly about his ex, the same man he'd written that heartbroken poem about, was driving me crazy. The TV droned on, filling the silence between us. We could faintly hear panic from the buildings next to us, doors slamming open and shut. For the first time, I appreciated having someone else in my apartment. At least I would not be up against the apocalypse alone, right? Even if my only company was a pretentious French poetry snob with unfairly good bone structure. Silver linings and all that jazz. 3 days later. In a single word, the first couple of days in lockdown were chaotic. The lockdown intensified and officials in hazmat suits patrolled every 3 hours. Liam and I were two wild cats put in the same cage, wrestling with the immediate intimacy of around-the-clock living. It was of little help that my studio apartment felt as roomy as a sardine can. Noah, must you leave your disgusting socks on every possible surface? Liam scowled, picking up a lone sock off the arm of my armchair as though it were a dead rodent. I looked away from my laptop, unable to concentrate on a paper for my contemporary art class. Dude, chill, it's called organized chaos. It's called being a snob, he said, lobbing the offending sock in my general direction. It softly landed on my keyboard with a thump. I rolled my eyes as I flicked it away. Yeah, well, we can't all be neat freaks like you, Your Highness. And honestly, that was the biggest understatement of the century. In the 3 days since lockdown, I'd learned in a hurry Liam Gerard was the human version of a type A personality. The guy made his bed with hospital corners every morning, for Christ's sake. He organized his pretentious my books by color and size. He even folded his dirty laundry into neat little squares before placing it in the hamper. It infuriated me, but at the same time, it was weirdly hot. I did a mental slap on the wrist. No brain. Bad brain. We are not going down that road again. Liam is an uptight pain in the ass, not the object of your quarantine fantasies. Except he kind of was, especially when he walked around in my apartment in nothing but a pair of low-slung sweatpants, or when he absently ran his fingers through that thick, dark hair as he read, his brow furrowed in concentration. God damn it, I was so screwed. I slammed my laptop shut and stood, forcing a very dramatic groan out of my throat to distract myself from the traitorous thoughts swirling in my head. I need caffeine. You want anything, or are you still too good for my plebeian coffee? Liam looked up from where he'd been doing push-ups on my yoga mat, and really, who the hell did push-ups during the pandemic? Ridiculously hot French poets, apparently. Actually, I wouldn't say no to a cup. Black, please. Excuse me? I stared at him, startled. Over the past couple of days, he'd have given every food and drink item I'd offered him the old snub from my instant oatmeal, down to my boxed mac and cheese. Instead, he munched on a bland mix of bread and milk. Sure, 1 cup of coffee coming right up, I said, heading for the kitchen. Waiting for my ancient coffee maker to sputter and hiss its way to life, I called over my shoulder. You know, I'm kind of shocked. I thought you'd rather lick the subway floor than drink my lowly bean juice. I could almost hear Liam's eye roll from across the room. I'm French, Noah. We're not coffee snobs. We're coffee enthusiasts. There's a difference. Uh-huh. And what's the difference exactly? I poured the steaming liquid into 2 mismatched mugs with a chipped Garfield logo and one that said, World's Okayest Friend, courtesy of Freya. Well, Noah, an enthusiast can appreciate all forms of coffee, even the subpar stuff. A snob turns their nose up at anything less than perfection, Liam said, wandering over to lean against the counter. He eyed the mugs with a wry smirk. And judging by the looks of those cups, I'd say we're definitely in subpar territory. I clutched the World's Okayest Friend mug to my chest in mock outrage. Hey, don't insult my mugs. They have sentimental value. Liam raised an eyebrow at that. Oh? And what's so sentimental about a cartoon cat with a caffeine addiction? I sniffed disdainfully and took a defiant sip of coffee, scalding my tongue in the process. That cartoon cat got me through some tough times, I'll have you know. Like finals week of freshman year, when I existed on absolutely nothing except lasagna and coffee for 72 hours straight. Somehow that doesn't surprise me at all, Liam remarked dryly, taking the Garfield mug with a nod of thanks. He raised it to his mouth, blew on the hot surface of the cup, and immediately nearly spat on the first sip. Ah, mon Dieu, what is this filth? He choked and placed the mug down roughly on the table. His eyes were tearing, face red. Are you trying to poison me? I couldn't help it. I burst out laughing, snorting coffee out of my nose. It's not that bad, you drama queen. You're just not used to the finer things in life, like burnt coffee and boxed meals. Liam shot me a baleful glare, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. It shouldn't have been attractive, it really shouldn't, but it was. In my defense, it was hard not to get attracted to a man you already had sex with. I miss the simpler days when I could stare at him in class all day, and the days when I'd buy overpriced coffee just to catch a glimpse of him seated by the corner window. You have a very strange definition of finer things, Liam pushed the offending mug back to me with a shudder. I'm beginning to think those are the only 2 food groups in your diet. I shrugged, taking another swig of my coffee. It really was terrible, but like hell was I going to admit that now. Hey, don't knock the boxed meals. It's a classic for a reason. Liam only nodded his head while a faint smile played at his lips. You're impossible. I prefer the term charmingly eccentric, thank you very much. I gave him a sassy grin. Leaning back on the counter. In that instance, the tension between us wasn't quite as overwhelming. It almost felt friendly, normal. Freya was right. The conversation with Liam wasn't half bad. I couldn't help but think about the possibilities. What if I'd spoken to him like I wanted to from the very first day? Things would have been great. Me, Liam, Louis. Shit. What was I thinking? He had an entire ex-boyfriend. Nonetheless, when Liam's look fell to my mouth, his eyes grew a touch darker, and in that instant the atmosphere around us became thick with something entirely different. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. Oh no, no, this could not be happening. I couldn't be stuck in a tiny apartment with a guy who made me feel like a hormonal teenager again. A guy who was funny and smart, and way out of my league, with unresolved feelings for his ex. Abort mission, abort. 1 week later. Slowly we started to find our groove, started to learn each other's patterns and pet peeves. I discovered Liam was physically incapable of sleeping past 7 a.m., even on weekends. He did this weird but somehow endearing thing where he mouthed the words to himself while reading. He had a secret weakness for reality TV despite his vocal disdain for lowbrow American drivel. In return, he came to learn that I painted under stress, that I still teared up with each and every viewing of the series finale of The Office, no matter how many times I'd seen it. And little by little, this wall of unfamiliarity began to thaw in front of us. The barbed comments and rolled eyes gave way to gentle jokes and late-night cuddles in the same bed. I wanted him to keep touching me. I wanted to lean into this warmth, breathe in the scent of his natural French odor, wanted to reenact the soft feel of his lips against mine. And from the constant heat in his gaze, I knew he wanted it too. But we were too scared, too uncertain to make that leap, to risk shattering the fragile balance we built on a terrible foundation of drunk desire and poorly timed outbreak. Today was one of those nights I was almost asleep when the world became dark, and I don't mean in the metaphorical, soul-crushing new disease quarantine kind of way. I mean full-on, can't see your hand in front of your face pitch black. What the hell? I cried out, looking for my phone on the nightstand. The screen turned on, brightening Liam's face on the opposite side of the bed. He looked disgruntled and a little ruffled with sleep. Power outage, he grumbled, his accent thicker than usual. Must be the storm. I padded to the window, peering out at the eerily dark street. Rain lashed against the glass, trees bowing under the force of the wind. Damn, looks like a doozy. Liam appeared at my elbow, his warmth seeping into my skin. Well, this is just fantastic. As if being trapped inside wasn't bad enough, now we get to do it in the dark. I snorted. Ever the optimist, aren't you? He shot me a wry look. Forgive me for not being thrilled at the prospect of sweating through the night like a Neanderthal. I glanced at my balcony, watching the rain hit the ground with large splatters. My lips curled in a happy smile at my new idea. Hey, you know what we should do? Liam eyed me warily. I'm almost afraid to ask. I grabbed his hand, tugging him towards the balcony. Come on! What are you— Noah! Liam sputtered as I dragged him outside, the rain instantly soaking through our thin t-shirts. Have you lost your mind? Regardless, I tipped my face up to the clouds, enjoying the refreshing drops on my body. It seemed like the first genuine event I'd had in weeks, a sudden burst of adrenaline following the numbness of quarantine. After a short while, Liam's opposition fizzled away. He leaned against the railing next to me and sighed. You are utterly ridiculous, you know that? Before I could halt them, my words spilt out. Yes, but you love me just because of it. The air became tense, stifling even. I felt Liam freeze, gaze focused on the side of my face. He swallowed audibly. I do. A flutter interrupted my heartbeat within my chest. I looked at him, hardly allowing myself to breathe. Liam, what are you saying? He touched me, supporting my jaw with a trembling hand. I'm saying that somewhere along the way, between the arguments and annoyance and the insanity of the situation, I think I'm falling for you, Noah. I made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob, placing my face in his palm. Holy shit, I hoped, but holy shit! Liam's thumb brushed over my bottom lip, achingly tender. Eloquent as always. Shut up, I murmured, right before I surged forward and kissed him. There was a messy collision of wet mouths and skin. Months of pent-up longing poured out in a single electrifying moment. Liam made a rough sound against my lips, hauling me closer, until we were aligned from chest to hip. I tangled my fingers in his drenched hair, marveling at the silk gild of it. The way his body shuddered under my touch. As the wind rolled down around longest in the world shrank into the circle of our embracing arms, I felt a flicker of something dangerously close to hope. Because for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt satisfied, down to the marrow of my bones, and it didn't matter that we were stuck in the middle of a citywide crisis, that our futures were one giant question mark. All that mattered was the feel of Liam's heartbeat against mine, with quiet certainty that, at this moment, we felt the same. The next morning, I woke up the day after feeling like a really sexy French truck had hit me. Just as a Taylor Swift song repeats in my mind, the incidents from last night were playing over and over, substituting catchy hooks with delightful French groans that whispered my name. I took a sigh and turned over to bury my face on my pillow. After several more minutes of enjoying the morning afterglow, I got up out of bed. My reflection in the mirror appeared to be from a zombie apocalypse film. If zombies wore their hair in a mess all the time and had a ton of love bites. Preparing myself for the undeniable awkwardness, I waddled out of my room. The apartment was quiet again, and it seemed too quiet. Still, just then, I detected coffee, and my stomach did a flip that had nothing at all to do with my cravings for caffeine. I took the bend into the kitchen, and there he was. Liam stood at the counter, his back to me, wearing one of my gray t-shirts that hugged his shoulders in ways that should be illegal before 9 a.m. Darn his muscled arms. That was a size large. "Morning," I croaked, my voice doing its best impression of a frog with laryngitis. Liam turned, and I swear the world went into slow motion. His blue eyes met mine, and for a split second I saw something there, a flicker of warmth, maybe even affection, but then it was gone, replaced by a carefully neutral expression that made my insides twist. "Good morning, Noah," he greeted, his accent somehow even more pronounced than usual. Was that a good sign? Did French guys get extra French when they were into someone? Or was it like a defense mechanism, retreating into maximum Frenchness when things got awkward? I shuffled over to the coffee maker, desperate for both caffeine and something to do with my hands. "So, wild night, huh?" I immediately wanted a facepalm. "Smooth, Sutton. Real smooth." Liam's lips twisted in what looked like a smile or a grimace. It wasn't always obvious to him. "Of course," he answered, taking a sip of his coffee. "The storm was really powerful." Oh God, were we doing this? The whole act of pretending like nothing occurred? I should mention I was pretty bad at normal social interaction, with 2 left feet. This amount of deception was way outside my pay grade. "Yeah, that storm," I said feebly, filling my cup with coffee and coming close to missing the mug. "Lots of, wetness and thunder." My face heated up, and Liam raised an eyebrow. "Wetness? Really? Why didn't I just print out a banner that said, 'My brain is filled with flashbacks and I have a crush on you,' and hang it over my head?" "Listen, Noah," Liam started, and my heart missed a beat. Here it comes, I thought. The "let's just be friends" speech, the "it was fun, but let's not make it weird" talk. I braced myself for the rejection, already planning my dramatic exit. Maybe I could fake a sudden and very specific allergy to Frenchmen. But instead, Liam said, "I've been thinking about my plans for after the lockdown ends." I blinked, thrown off script. "Oh?" I managed, trying to sound casual and probably failing spectacularly. Liam nodded, his expression unreadable. "Yes, I think I'll be traveling to France once travel restrictions are lifted." And just like that, I felt like I'd been sucker punched. All the air left my lungs with a whoosh. Of course he was going back to France. What had I expected? That he'd stick around in my crappy apartment, drinking bad coffee and watching me trip over my own feet for the rest of eternity? "Oh," I said again, not even hiding the disappointment in my voice. "Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Gotta get back to all those, French things." Liam brow furrowed slightly. "Noah, But I cut him off, suddenly desperate to be anywhere but here. "Hey, no worries, this was just a quarantine thing, right? I was actually thinking of how to tell you the same thing." God, I sucked at lying. I flashed him what I hoped was a convincing smile, but probably looked more like a grimace. "Anyway, I should probably finish my art assignment. Deadlines wait for no man, not even during global pandemics, you know." Without waiting for a response, I grabbed a cup of coffee, retreated to the room. I closed the door behind me with a soft click and let out a shaky breath. Stupid. What had I been thinking? That one kiss in the rain would change everything? That smashing him once more would seal the deal for good measure? That Liam would suddenly decide to give up his whole life in France for what? For me? For this? I glanced around my cramped room, taking in the piles of laundry, the stack of half-read books, and the wilting pothos plant I'd optimistically named Lazarus in the vain hope it would rise from the dead. This was my life, messy, chaotic, perpetually unfinished, and Liam was polished marble and crisp linen shirts, and a future that probably involved walks around the Seine and fancy wine tastings, not Netflix binges and 2 a.m. plates of boxed mac and cheese. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a news alert. I glanced at the screen. My heart sank as I read the headline. City officials announce plan to begin phased reopening. Lockdown measures to be gradually lifted. 3 days later. For the next few days, I did my best impression of a ghost. If ghosts were really into avoiding eye contact and mumbling excuses about needing to paint in solitude. Liam, for his part, also kept things light and distant. But it all came to a head when one evening I was sprawled out on the couch. My eyes remained glued to the TV, but my mind was far off. Liam emerged from his room. Well, technically my room, but whatever. "Noah," he called out, his voice cutting through the awkward silence that had become our new normal. "Can we talk?" I tensed, my fight-or-flight response kicking into high gear. Sure, what's up?" Liam sat down on the other end of the couch, his posture rigid. "I feel like things have been strange between us lately." I snorted before I could stop myself. "Strange? Nah, this is totally normal. Just two platonic people chilling in quarantine. We weren't even friends." Liam's brow furrowed, a familiar crease appearing between his eyebrows. A crease that I definitely wasn't thinking about kissing away. "Noah, please, I'm trying to be serious here." "Well, maybe I don't want to be serious," I snapped, surprising myself with my harsh voice. "Maybe I'm tired of everything being so perfect and put together for you all the time." Liam's eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" The dam broke and suddenly everything came pouring out. "You with your fancy clothes and your perfect face and your plans to jet off back to France like none of this even mattered, like it was all just some quarantine fling to pass the time until you could get back to your real life." Liam stood up, his face flushing with anger. "Is that what you really think, that I'm just some shallow person who only cares about appearances?" I jumped to my feet too, not willing to let him have the height advantage. "Well, if the designer shoe fits," Liam snarled. "You're impossible," as he frantically ran his hand through his hair. "You're so consumed by cynicism and your fear of going after what you want that you fail to notice when someone is trying to—" He abruptly ended his words, his jaw firmly clenching. I waited for him to complete what he was saying, my heart beating so hard I thought I could hear it, but before either of us could say anything else, our phones buzzed. My stomach sank as I read the notification. Lockdown restrictions are now lifted. Liam and I made eye contact, the seriousness of what that signified resting heavily between us. It was over. "I need some air," I moved past him, walking towards the balcony. Liam called my name, but I didn't look back. I couldn't bring myself to witness the relief on his face. I couldn't bear to see him pack his stuff. As I stepped out into the cool night air, I felt something inside me crack. Back to reality. Back to being just Noah Sutton, perpetual sociophobe and king of bad timing. "Noah," Liam murmured behind me, reaching out to take my hand. His skin was warm, his touch achingly gentle. "Please listen. I want to return to France for one reason." "Of course, to fix things with Louis." He gaped at me, as if shocked. "No, I need to set things in order and spend some time with my family before next semester." "What?" I gaped, doubting if he'd just spoken in English. "You're coming back?" "Yeah, the exchange program was supposed to last a year, but I also have the option to finish my degree here. I'm scared of going back to my old life, of losing this feeling." He gestured vaguely with his free hand as if trying to encompass the enormity of what had grown between us. My ears rang and I bit my lips to hold back a smile. "So, us? You'll be back? To me?" "Yes, it was pretty obvious from my poem, but Louis was toxic. I've known him since we were children." He turned to face me fully, his gaze intent even in the fading evening light. "Dating made sense when we both came out to our parents, but Louis still hasn't figured out the basics of loving someone else more than himself." "So, it's just me?" A small wounded sound escaped my throat, my heart cracking open like an egg in my chest. "Yes. I don't want superficial flings or relationships of convenience. I want something real, with someone who would go as far as buying overpriced coffee 3 times a week just to see me." "You knew!" My cheeks flamed with embarrassment. He leaned in, warm breath ghosting over my cheeks. "Why do you think I always sat at that corner table? to give you a better view. Since you already know, let's cut the pretense. I want you too, I whispered, the words raw and exposed. More than I've ever wanted anything. Liam's smile was sweet, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Then let's give this a real shot, No more assuming the worst, no more running away without talking to the other person. We'll take it day by day and figure it out together. Together. The words settled into my bones like a promise, warm and sure. I surged forward, capturing Liam's lips in a searing kiss. He made a soft, startled noise against my mouth before sinking into me, his hands coming up to frame my face. We kissed like we were drowning, and the other was air, deep and desperate and achingly tender. It felt like absolution, like coming home after a long, weary journey. When we finally broke apart, we were both flushed and panting, our foreheads pressed together. Liam's thumb struck over my cheekbone, a feather-light touch that sent shivers down my spine. Below us, the city stirred to life, the first tentative signs of a world on the mend. But in that moment, in the circle of Liam's arms, everything else faded away. 2 months later. Isn't it beautiful? I stepped back, admiring my handiwork with a critical eye. A tiny mural I just finished painting was splayed across the previously boring white wall of Liam's new apartment. No, our apartment. It was a whimsical explosion of color, all swirling abstract shapes and playful lines. It had taken some convincing to get Liam on board with the idea of me defacing his pristine new space, but in the end he'd caved, accepting with wry resignation that a little creative chaos was part and parcel of life with Noah Sutton. I still can't believe you talked me into this, Liam grumbled as he took out a bunch of expensive kitchen appliances, but a smile was pulling at the edges of his mouth, a kind of fondness in his eyes that caused my stomach to flip. I grinned as I wiped my paint-stained hands on my jeans. Hey, you knew the deal when you asked me to move in. Art is life and all that jazz. Liam snorted and threw a crumpled ball of packing paper at me. Sure, don't remind me of that the next time you complain about my 10-step skincare routine. That's art too. Oh really? I caught the projectile easily, sticking my tongue out in retaliation. Just wait until I fill the medicine cabinet with paint jars and dead plants. Then we'll see who's laughing, pretty boy. Liam's expression went comically horrified for a moment before he caught my eye, a reluctant chuckle escaping. You're a menace, Noah Sutton, an absolute terror. Yeah, but you love me, I sing-songed, sauntering over to loop my arms around his neck. Liam's gaze softened, his hands settling on my hips like they were made to rest there. God help me, I really do, he murmured. The words never failed to steal my breath, to set loose a flurry of butterflies in my chest, the notion that his brilliant, infuriating, endlessly fascinating man had chosen me, had looked at my messy life and wanted to build something new with me. It still felt like a dream sometimes, but it was real. Every morning I woke up to the warmth of Liam beside me, to the mingled scent of coffee, paint, and expensive French cologne. Be my boyfriend. The words tumbled out before I could stop them, graceless, artless, but so heartfelt. Liam's eyes went wide, his grip on my hips tightening convulsively. What did you just say? He breathed. My heart was in my throat, but I barreled on, the certainty of him burning through me like a wildfire, along with a sprinkle of Freya's pep talk about the new French exchange student that Liam was asked to show around earlier today. Be my boyfriend, Liam. I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but I can't imagine my life without you in it. Actually, I can, but it's really boring. Liam stared at me like I just handed him the moon, shock and wonder chasing each other across his face. For a moment, I thought he might actually pass out, but then he moved forward, crushing me against him. Yes, he gasped between kisses. You just ruined dinner plans. Do you still want the boyfriend cake? I groaned, slamming my head into his chest. That's what dinner is about? Never mind. Let's still go to dinner. I'll still ask you out, and you had better say yes, Liam threatened, pushing his index finger on my forehead with each word. A giggle slipped past my lips, and I raised my hand solemnly. I swear there's no way I'll say no, unless it's chocolate cake. Oh, shut up, he leaned in again, swallowing the rest of my words. We'd come so far from those two confused, frustrated strangers shouting at each other across my small living room. We'd weathered storms and silences, insecurities and misunderstandings, but we'd also found something rare and wonderful, something worth fighting for. And as I pulled back to grin at him, I knew with bone-deep surety that I would go through it all again in a heartbeat. Every stumble, every setback, every aching second of fear and doubt, because it had led us here, to this moment, to this life we were building together. And that is worth everything. Conclusion. Life after quarantine was like trying to squeeze into pre-quarantine jeans. A little tight, but oddly comforting. Our date nights became a culinary roller coaster. One day, I'm butchering French pronunciations at some fancy restaurant, and the next, I'm teaching Liam the fine art of DoorDash. Life's weird, but hey, I'm not complaining. The end. Have you ever had a quarantine romance? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become part of our Rainbow Force. And stay wholesome.